In the paranormal war room, the legends arise. We're diving deep down where the truth never lies. Diving deep down where the truth never lies. Unravel the mysteries, let the stories unfold. This beat, these tales are daring and bold.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Paranormal War Room. I'm your host, Corky, and I got a special show tonight. I've got Mr. Rabbi Rothschild with me tonight. Rabbi, introduce yourself and man, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started tonight.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you to your audience. I'm Rabbi Rothschild. I stream my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for world peace. I've been doing so for more than 4 years. My streams go back to the pandemic. We've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between. This is a real-life Truman Show, a real-life Big Brother. This is a timeline and a time capsule of human achievement. In the 1990s, the phrase content is king was coined, and I'm making it true today. I'm king of the internet. This is the biggest event in global history, and here's why. In 2017, The Economist magazine stated that data had overtaken petroleum as Earth's #1 resource, and I have more data archived on the internet than any person ever, which is making me very influential. I'm going viral, and when I do, I want to make you, your audience, your friends, your family, all financially independent if they're not already. I want to ensure that they have generational wealth if they don't already. And I want them to be able to start charities and philanthropic organizations of their own.
Man, that sounds awesome. Financial stability is what I think what we're all reaching for, man. So anything that could ever help us, reach that would be a blessing. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And the way that I plan on doing it is the monetization of the data. I have at any given time over 25 YouTube streams going from 360 degrees, everything from ceiling cameras to desktop cameras and everything in between. I have tablets, laptops, Chromebooks, certainly handheld devices that are recording my life from different angles. And what this is doing is archiving not just my life, but all of human history, because 24 hours a day, I keep a radio on in the background that's archiving all of the events that are happening. So everything from the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between that we've seen over the course of the last more than 4 years. And I think it'll be really important to future generations to have this type of an archive. In the past, people might have considered being a journalist or writing in a journal, or being a diarist writing in a diary. And that's been generally a really great way for historians to be able to glean what has occurred in the past. And I, instead of using a pencil and paper, use a video stream as my archive, as my medium for archiving world events. And thus, it's more than just the story of one human, it's the story of the world, which I think is really beautiful. Moreover, a really interesting aspect of my stream that I think people will utilize it for in the future is studying everything from aging to biological aspects of certainly breathing patterns, eating patterns, behavior patterns, micro behavior, things like certainly sleep patterns, circadian rhythms, all the aspects of the human body that we've never really been able to study over long periods of time are all available to the public for free. And I would like to continue to do this for the rest of my life. That's the goal, to give humanity the ability to be able to learn from my streams and learn from the history that we're recording.
Awesome. Tell me, man, this is a very unique idea you've got here and a very unique thing that you're doing. And I think everybody out there can appreciate the hard work you're putting into it. But, what gave you this idea to do this ambitious thing that you're doing here?
Certainly. Well, in addition to being an Orthodox rabbi, I am a certified project management professional. I have successfully launched apps on the App Store and Google Play. And it was during the pandemic where my position as a certified project management professional went from the traditional going in the office every day in a suit and tie to working remotely for a Fortune 100 company. And I recognized that I had a very traditional life that it was now being moved into the virtual or digital world. And I went from never being on camera to being on camera anywhere between 8 and 10 hours a day for my job, and then an additional few hours due to just community responsibilities within my synagogue, and recognize that if I'm already on camera anywhere between now 10 to 12 hours a day, it's already half of my life basically is being streamed. And the anxiety that I normally would have on stream was reduced. And after work, especially during the pandemic, I would hit golf balls at Tiger Woods' golf
Mhm.
course in Anaheim, California, and I wanted to see what my golf swing was like, and just record it. And started making little jokes to myself, knowing that I was on camera whenever I'd slice the ball or hook the ball or top the ball. And I thought these little quirks were interesting enough to perhaps want to share with my future family someday, God willing. I'd like to have a wife and children, and I felt that these would be like interesting home movies for them, or for lack of a better phrase. So I started uploading that data to the cloud, starting in 2021. It was taking me a long time to download it and re-upload it, and I was getting throttled by my cellular provider and my ISP and such. And I just recognized there's got to be a better way. And then I learned more and more about streaming and felt, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I want to do it better than any person's ever done it ever. And I had seen the Truman Show in the past. I recognized that there are shows like Big Brother that basically have cameras all over a person's living quarters. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'd like to do something like that to give the world a portal into my life so they could see every aspect of my life, and also to record history as a gift to future generations. And so, starting in fall of 2021, I started with the live streaming. A little prior to then, I was using GoPros to record my life. So, I have quite a few hours and lots of data backed up on hard drives and SD cards and such. And from there, I started creating a lot of YouTube accounts because you need that many to be able to stream from so many different devices. And that was really a unique aspect of the project as well, as just the amount of social media that I was creating. So I have over 100 YouTube accounts, over 200 Instagram accounts, over 500 Twitch accounts, over 1,000 TikTok accounts, over 2,000 Twitter accounts, over 5,000 Blue Sky accounts, and over 10,000 Kick accounts. I have more social media than any person ever. So when people find out about what I do, it's going to be a treasure hunt for all of the content that I've created over the last 4 years from all the different angles and the different mediums that I've done at different platforms on which I've done it. And I think that's a really exciting aspect of the stream as well. I am someone who loves art, so there's a lot of music on my stream. I'm someone who certainly loves film. There are many films that I've streamed on the stream as best I can without getting copyright strikes. Sports, we're right in the middle of the World Cup now. I streamed the previous World Cup, the Women's World Cup. We're at more than 3 Olympic Games now. And, everything from Super Bowls to NBA championships, the World Series, the Stanley Cup, you name it. If it's a sport, I've done my best to be able to archive it alongside all of the historic events that we've been able to cover over the course of the last 4 years.
Wow. You are a busy guy, man. This is
That's absolutely.
absolutely fascinating to think that you come up with this idea, and it's a very unique idea. And my hat's off to you, man. I hope it works out, and I hope you accomplish all the goals you're trying to accomplish, man, because it's funny that you say that, you want to be able to show your future kids or your future wife, this is something they can look back and, see a part of your life and the history that you've made or what was going on while you were making it. And that's one of the things that I thought was unique about when I started doing my podcast is this is always something my kids can look back on and see dad in action back in the day. You know what I'm talking about?
That's
So,
absolutely right. Yeah,
yep,
we
yep,
share that.
yep, yep. It's like a permanent online diary they can always go check out and hear dad's voice and see what he was really like, back when he was, you know, doing good. Let's put it that way.
That's absolutely right. And you are doing good. And you've got to think that your voice may echo for decades or
Yeah.
centuries or even millennia. Just this is still the very early days of the internet and what's being
Hmm.
recorded. And you're basically making your mark on history by your podcast. And I feel I'm doing the same through my live streams.
Absolutely. I'm from the generation I was blessed to live in a time before the internet even existed. And now I'm living in a time where the internet's flourishing. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, so
I
Yeah,
feel the
it's
same.
exciting. Yeah,
I,
it's
f- I, f-
exciting to see.
I feel the same. And so I too grew up in a day where no one had a personal computer. There was
Mhm.
no internet. People played outside until the street lights went on.
Yep.
It was a much different world. And then through this stream, an interesting aspect of it is for the first year that I was streaming, large language models like ChatGPT and Grok and all of the others were not a thing. So I actually have a
Mhm.
period of the internet between the pandemic and approximately November of 2022 where we didn't really have AI as much utilized in our daily life like we do today. And then I was an early adopter of ChatGPT in November 2022 and a user in on November 30th, 2022. And I've been able to see the way that AI has been able to change our lives. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of the stream as well, because just like you and I had a period of our lives where we didn't have computers, perhaps, or the internet, there was a time of our lives where we didn't have AI either. And at least my
Mhm.
stream's been able to archive that. And I find that to be really interesting. We're going to be able to see the employment changes of AI, how it's affected people's behavior, how it's affected people's efficiency. How some people see it as a negative thing, some people see it as a positive thing. Really, it's perhaps just a tool, and depending on how you want to use it. But I really think that it'll be interesting for future generations to be able to see in real time over the course of long periods, especially in that first year. Oh, you mean you couldn't just go to a website and have it create an outline for you? No, you could not.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was a lot of manual work and a lot of googling that you had to do to find something on a subject. And I just think that'll be a really interesting aspect of society as well, and to give the world a little bit of a window into what life was like before AI.
Absolutely, man. Totally fascinating. And just to switch gears just a little bit, man, you sent me an outline of things you want to try to discuss tonight. And number one on the list is one of the things that I am passionate about, and that is the UFO and and UAP disclosure thing. You want to get into a little bit of that right now and just, explain what you want to talk about with that?
Absolutely. So the UFO phenomena is something that is near and dear to my heart. I am someone who listens to Coast AM every single night and have for more than 4 years. So you have an archive of all of those shows on my stream. I've been fascinated by the subject really my whole life, but I didn't always think it was real. I was a major skeptic of this up until about 2008. And then around 2008, I saw Dr. Stephen Greer's The Disclosure Project, if you're familiar with what that is, that was recorded originally May 9th, 2001. And I
Hmm.
saw it a few years later. And this was the first time I had really seen vetted whistleblowers of the government, of contractors, not just from the United States, but globally, talk about this phenomena in a real serious manner. And I thought, okay, there must be really something to this. When previously I may have even debated people on the subject saying, if it existed, we'd know about it. It's too hard to keep this a secret, et cetera, et cetera. All the excuses that we hear within the world of ufology to then be a believer was eye opening to myself. But then I had to tell everybody I knew about it. And I think everybody kind of feels that way when you start to see this evidence. And really, I must say, the people who I shared this information with, many of them were very open to it. And they even shared it with their friends and, began to spread a little bit. And then from there, certainly we had the history that I would go through of the alien abductee phenomena. I started to learn about the early cases of alien abductions, starting with Antonio Villas Boas in Brazil, that occurred in 1957, specifically October 15th, 1957. This is a story of a 23-year-old farmer. He was working late plowing fields on his family's farm. Because of the summer heat, he would work after sunset. He noticed what appeared to be a bright red star. He approached it, and as it approached, he realized it was not a star, and he noticed that it started to move toward him. He described the craft as egg-shaped metallic, and it rested on three legs. And basically, he was captured. And when he was trying to flee, four humanoid beings emerged. They chased him through the field. They physically grabbed him and carried him aboard. And the beings were roughly 5 feet tall. They had gray coveralls on, a helmet like headgear, blue eyes, no understandable speech. They communicated through barking and growling sounds. And inside the craft, he saw metallic corridors, strange red symbols on the walls, strong chemical odor, bright lightning without visible light fixtures. His clothing was removed, blood was drawn from his chin, his entire body was inspected, strange instruments were used, gas was released into the room, and an attractive female humanoid entered. Blonde hair, blue eyes, high cheekbones, large cat-like eyes. Boaz claimed they engaged in sexual intercourse, and the female pointed to her abdomen, to him, and then to the sky. And he believed that she was indicating that she would bear a hybrid child. He was returned to the field several hours later. Another major case that fascinated me was the Betty and Barney Hill case, which happened from September 19th to 20th, 1961. This happened in the White Mountains of New Hampshire in the United States. This was a married couple returning from vacation in Canada, driving through rural New Hampshire at night. An interesting thing about Betty and Barney Hill was they were an interracial couple in a time where interracial couples were not the norm. And Betty initially noticed a bright light. It appeared to move independently of the stars. The object followed their vehicle for many miles. Barney stopped the car. He viewed the object through binoculars. He claimed he saw a large disc-shaped craft, rows of windows, humanoid figures looking directly at him. One figure appeared to be the leader. There was missing time, and this is something that we hear within the abductee movement, this idea of missing time. They returned home much later than expected. Approximately 2 hours were unaccounted for. Their watches stopped working. Betty's dress was damaged, and Barney's shoes were unusually scuffed. And one interesting thing of this, Betty's dress was damaged. It's like the aliens did not know how to unzip a zipper. Something so simple that they did not know, and they tore her dress. And Barney's shoes were unusually scuffed. The top of his shoes were scuffed, which is not a place where shoes normally get scuffed, but only if you were being dragged. Generally, would that occur. Under hypnotic recall, years later, they both underwent hypnosis, and their description of the beings were they had large wraparound eyes, gray skin, hairless heads, thin noses, small mouths, uniform-like clothing. Aboard the craft, Betty's account, she was escorted through corridors. She met a leader figure. She was placed on an examination table. Hair samples were taken, skin samples taken. A needle was inserted into her abdomen. Barney's account, he was separated from Betty. He was subjected to medical examination. Body measurements were recorded. A cup-like device was placed on his body. And this was always fascinating to me, the star map. Betty claimed that she was shown a three-dimensional star chart. She later drew the map from memory. Some UFO researchers associated it with the Zeta Reticuli system. And this is of historical importance because it created the modern gray alien archetype, and it became the template for most later abduction reports. There are some other really important ones that we won't necessarily go into, but I do just want to state. There's the Herbert Schirmer case, December 3rd, 1967, in Ashland, Nebraska. He was a local police officer on patrol. He had an encounter. Certainly, there's the Pascagoula incident in Mississippi, and there's the Carl Higdon case, October 25th, 1974. I should say the Mississippi event was October 11th, 1973. Carl Higdon was near Rawlins, Wyoming. He was hunting elk. Basically, there was a strange occurrence. A bullet appeared frozen in midair. The environment became unnaturally silent. A tall being suddenly appeared, over 6 feet tall, yellow skin, large eyes, sparse hair, no visible chin, and the being identified itself as also one. The craft had transparent walls, strange interior lighting, no visible machinery. Then, of course, there's the Travis Walton case, November 5th, 1975, one of the more famous cases that later became a movie. He was in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. He was with 6 coworkers driving after logging work. They observed a brilliant glowing craft hovering among the trees. They described the craft to be a large metallic disc, intense golden light hovering silently. there was a beam incident. Walton walked toward the object. The bright beam struck him. Witnesses saw him thrown backwards, and he disappeared for 5 days. There was a major police investigation that was launched. Inside the craft, Walton claimed he awakened on a table in a curved metallic room, surrounded by small beings. The first group of beings were hairless, large eyes, child-sized stature. Walton repeatedly fought them physically. Then there was a Nordic encounter. Later, he encountered tall humans, blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing blue uniforms. The spaceship interior had multiple rooms, dome-like ceilings, a complex machinery, hangar-like chamber containing other craft, and he was returned. The human-looking being placed a mask over his face. He lost consciousness, and he awoke near a hallway. Awoke near a highway. And these are just some of the more famous alien abduction events that fascinate me, and I think probably fascinate a lot of your audience as to what is actually taking place. And why don't we get these types of stories today? The last major one that happened really like 30 years ago. And I'm not saying that the alien abduction doesn't happen. I think it still does. I just think that people don't perhaps take it as seriously as maybe they once did, or that the media doesn't cover it in a way that they once did. Certainly today, if you had one of these encounters, you might just go on TikTok, or you might go on Instagram, or maybe even make a YouTube video. And I'm not saying that that can't be vetted or verified or anything, but in the past there were magazines that were available, newspaper articles. There was more in-depth reporting on these types of phenomena to some extent. Perhaps we have more people interested in the matter today, but many times if you are in the media and you investigate something like this and you want to publish it, you will many times get that article rejected by your editor. And so there are many reasons why the alien abductee phenomena seems to not have as major cases anymore, but I still think that it goes on. And this was one of the things that really caught my attention in this. Another one is the Bob Lazar topic. If you're familiar with Bob Lazar,
Absolutely, yeah.
excellent. Area 51 S4. So this is Site 4, an area of what was known as the Nevada test site. And specifically about 15 miles south of Area 51 as we know it. And Bob Lazar, during the late 1980s, he was a nuclear researcher, specifically focused on advanced propulsion. He had previously worked at Los Alamos Laboratories in New Mexico. He was recruited basically because one of the fathers of nuclear weapons saw him reading or I should say, Bob saw him, Edward Teller, reading a newspaper article that just so happened to be written about Bob and a jet propulsion car that he had created. And over the course of some time, Bob was recruited, or at least eventually hired through a contractor, EG&G, and was working. Didn't really necessarily know what he would be working on, but would eventually take the Janet flights from McCarran, at the time now Harry Reid International Airport, to Area S4, and was briefed on this topic and some of the interesting things that happened to him. He had some kind of allergen test that was done on his body, and they gave him some kind of pine-smelling liquid that perhaps erased parts of his memory. And the one thing that I could never been able to get past, and it's just an amazing thought to me, is that he read in his briefing that aliens had done at least 65 major changes to human DNA over the course of our time here, and that we are seeded here. So this would be something that's known as either planned panspermia or guided panspermia. Additionally, this is guided evolution. And the idea that we aren't alone. And Bob at the time is a major skeptic of the idea. He's not someone who likes ufology. Still to this day doesn't really very much enjoy it. And thought that he may have been reading some kind of misinformation. But over the course of several months of working at the test site, he would work on something that he would name the sport model that basically was 50 or so feet across, was able to work inside of it, see that it was basically like 3D printed, a 3D printed craft, that it had small chairs, and he worked on the propulsion aspects of it, specifically with a type of element that wasn't yet discovered, and it's element 115. And it would only be discovered a decade or so or more later in Moscow. It's known as Moscovium. It's known as Un Pentium. It's also known as element 115. But allegedly, this type of material is used to propel these crafts at extreme speeds. It perhaps can create a warped space time, maybe perhaps be able to warp gravity and create either a force field or some type of point in front of the craft where space time can be bent so that huge amounts of distances can be traveled almost instantaneously. And when I started to hear about these types of stories, this was just absolutely fascinating to me. I'm sure it's fascinating to the audience because this is science. This is not fringe. This is mainstream science. Element 115 is on the periodic table, and it was not at when Bob Lazar was discussing this, and some of the other really fascinating things that I would learn over this journey, like Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso and his discoveries of what occurred after Roswell, is another really fascinating thing that may be affecting us in a like just using the technology that we're using right now. Philip Corso, he wrote a book in 1997 known as The Day After Roswell. His core claim was there was a Roswell recovery program, and his main assertion was that a non-human craft crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. The U.S. military recovered wreckage materials and allegedly biological remains. His claim about the government structure said that there was a secret effort that existed to collect and recover materials, analyze them under military intelligence, distribute findings to industry for development, and he described this as an informal pipeline from the military research to private contractors. His alleged role, what he said was, he claimed that he worked in Army intelligence. He later served in the Foreign Technology Division. He was assigned to handle recovered materials. His job was to seed foreign or recovered technology ideas into U.S. industry. He described the process. He would receive recovered fragments or descriptions. He would identify civilian companies already working on similar problems. He would pass along materials or concepts to accelerate the development. And the technologies that he claimed were derived from Roswell, and this is really the most famous part of his claims. He said alien-derived materials influenced the development of integrated circuits, microelectronics. He claimed that early microchip development was influenced by recovered technology insights. What he implied is that compact computing concepts came from alien material analysis. Also, fiber optics. He claimed guidance from recovered materials contributed to fiber optic research. His framing, he suggested unusual light transmission properties inspired civilian research. Lasers. He claimed laser development was accelerated by reverse engineering insights. Night vision technology. He claimed military night vision systems were influenced by recovered tech analysis. Kevlar and advanced materials. He claimed ultra-strong synthetic fibers were inspired by alien hull material properties. Other claimed technologies, advanced detection systems, particle beam concepts, even things like Velcro. And this claim is the central idea that he presented. He said that the military did not openly reverse engineer the craft in a lab. Instead, they extracted conceptual advantages. He passed them to private industry quietly and allowed companies to develop them as if independently discovered. His framing is that this was portrayed as a controlled technological acceleration program. In his claim about the alien bodies, he said he saw evidence of recovered non-human biological entities. He described seeing a body in storage. He claimed at Fort Riley in his earlier retellings, and his claims about the government structure, he claimed in broad terms that there's a coordinated intelligence effort managing recovered materials, that early involvement of senior military there was an early involvement of senior military leadership and a long-term secrecy structure around aerial anomalies. He loosely associated this with historical defense and intelligence figures, but uh, it's difficult to provide any type of evidence. So we really just have his word on these types of um, discoveries that he had. But even if some of what he says is true, means that the way that we're communicating right now is actually somehow related to reverse engineered alien technology, which is just mind blowing in my opinion. And I would say as well, it makes sense if you look at history from antiquity into certainly the more ancient times, into the medieval period, into the Renaissance, into the Enlightenment, into the Industrial Revolution. Um, and then all of a sudden, once we have World War II and Roswell and such, there's this explosion of technology that occurs. It's fascinating to know that between about 70 years or so, of 1900 to 1970, we would go from having the Wright flyer, the Wright brothers. We would go from not being able to get off the ground in a fixed wing craft to having the SR-71 Blackbird. That's an immense amount of development over the course of 70 years that we didn't
Yeah,
see necessarily from the previous 70 years or the previous 70 years before that. And
absolutely.
to think that we were influenced by some type of extraterrestrial society is not all that far fetched when you just look at the evidence that we see in our daily life and how it's changed. So those are some of the topics that I find to be fascinating with the alien phenomenon, and I think we're in a period of soft disclosure where disclosure happens slowly. I don't know if we'll ever have this day where they announce to the whole world that we're not alone. But I appreciate the efforts that people like you are making to be able to give people like me the opportunity to have a platform to discuss some of these fascinating topics.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I'll put it like this. You made the comment that, we went from the Wright brothers fixed wing aircraft to the SR-71 in the span of 70, some odd years, something like that. How I've always put it is we went from the Wright brothers, fixed wing aircraft to landing on the moon in 70 years. That's the way I've always put it. But I think you have to be pretty naive to look out in the sky and see all these stars and these basically infinity amount of planets and stuff like that to think that we're the only life that happened. I just think that if you think that way, that's a pretty naive way of thinking. I don't believe that for a minute. But to back up a little bit, when you were going over the abduction stories and stuff like that, I'm curious to think, why do you think they mate with us? Why would an advanced alien species want to mate with us? What do you think their purpose in doing that is?
This is a phenomenal question, and I
Mhm.
will have to say I don't know for sure, and I don't think any human necessarily knows for sure. But I have heard the theory that Earth in itself was seeded here, or life, I should say,
Mhm.
was seeded on Earth, and that experiments are going on, and that perhaps the hybrid program, which is this is known as, is an experiment of some
Mhm.
sort to create either a different type of species or to undergo some type of test in one way or another. And if you recall the different species that I was talking about within the alien abductee phenomenon, they vary. Some of them are the tall whites, some of them are the Nordics, some of them are the small grays. We even hear of reptilians and some others. So perhaps there are different alien civilizations that are doing work on humans for their own personal reasons. Just like if we were biologists in an environment, say, just in a wildlife sanctuary, and we were tagging animals. Some of them we might tag to be able to trace their migration patterns. Others we might in vitro fertilize to be able to test their offspring and how maybe similar species mate that wouldn't normally mate under traditional relationships. We do these things with animals from a biological perspective, and so it's not all that strange to think that a higher intelligent being might do the same with us. But in answer to your question, I don't fully know why this is being done. It's one of those questions that still persists in my mind. Another one that persists in my mind is, if aliens are so advanced, why would they crash? Don't you think they have some kind of sensor that would stop them from crashing? And that's another one I don't have a very good
I've,
answer
I've
for.
got a good theory about that. If you want to know,
Let's
if you
hear
want to
it.
hear it real quick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I grew up listening to Star Trek, and I grew up listening to Art Bell with Coast to Coast AM, like you mentioned before. That podcast or that show is the reason this podcast exists. But
Excellent.
going back to the crash stuff, because common sense would say, if they're this advanced, why are they crashing?
Right.
And there's several reasons, but I think the main reason is, just like on Star Trek, I think they're observing us, and I think they hold off on showing us, that they exist until there's probably a point to a civilization gets to, and that's when they will begin to help. And I think a lot of these crashes are gifts.
Yes.
That's stuff they plant to kind of help us take that next step in evolution to get to a point to where they can reveal themselves to us. I think that's the main thing, because it isn't logical that these crafts would crash. I think they have to be plants, they have to be gifts that, help us get to the next step of evolution. If that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. And it's more mainstream ufology thought that these are donations.
Yeah,
And
donation.
my only question is, why wouldn't they just keep it in one piece? It's a lot easier to reverse engineer and such if it's in one piece. And why would they have bodies on it as well? But the thought is that for whatever reason they may have, they wanted us to, in a more natural way, be able to reverse engineer these things, as opposed to just giving us a donation in perfect condition, making us work for it a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah.
It also leads to their secrecy a little bit as well. So
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. I think they are donations of some sort, and that's pretty mainstream ufology. And, as we move more in the modern age, we're seeing that the government is extremely interested in this subject, and has been for even before World War II, where these crafts, these balls of light, were known as Foo Fighters. That there was the flight machines, or the air machine movement that happened around the Gilded Age, around the end of the 19th century into the 20th century, that people were seeing just air machines. They did not know how to describe them. And I think that now we've had, in 2017, the New York Times, the paper of record, at least in the United States, has had the discussion of the Nimitz case off the coast of San Diego, where the Tic Tac object is what it's known as. The Tic Tac craft was seen moving at hundreds, if not thousands of miles per hour, and making right turns, all on a FLIR camera, a special kind of camera that the military's used. And this 2004 footage was made public. And when I was first studying this subject, I would have done anything to get this on the front of the New York Times. That legitimized it in my mind. That case legitimized it. It went from, hey, watch this documentary I've seen online, to just read the New York Times. I mean, that changed everything. That made this, in my opinion, a mainstream centrist topic. And no longer was it fringe. No longer was it seen as perhaps some type of pseudoscience. This is science, and plain and simple. And then from there, to have the David Grush revealings as a whistleblower, that there are still programs within the United States government that are occurring that are studying these topics. And then even more recently, this year, with the administration providing some of the Department of Defense's information on what we have on these crafts. It's just more and more evidence that's mounting. And ufologists at one time, again, were seen as fringe people. We're mainstream now. If you were to poll 100 Americans, more than 50% of them know that we are not alone. Now, we may not all agree that they are here, and we may not all agree that the alien abduction phenomena is real, but the idea that the universe is so vast that the Drake equation, basically the universe has so many potential opportunities for life that we aren't alone, and that life perhaps is not unique to Earth, is a mainstream thought. And so, what does that mean for us in the here and now? It's about spreading the information. It's about taking this very seriously. It's about studying it from a scientific perspective. Everything that we've talked about in our discussion already today has been backed in science to some extent. At least people who are talking about this phenomena in terms of physics, in terms of chemistry. These are not people who don't have any kind of credentials. They've been vetted by the military. To quote someone from the Disclosure Project, I was trusted with the nuclear secrets of the United States. I am someone who should be trusted by what I'm saying regarding the UFO phenomenon, and I see that as well. And a lot of people want to know, okay, well, where does this lead? And there's always the discussion of Project Bluebeam, which may occur in the future. It's been hypothesized. The first I ever heard of it, and this certainly is not the first it ever was discussed, but was by Dr. Rosen in the Disclosure Project. She had worked for Werner von Braun, the head of the NASA rocket program and the German rocket program, and she stated that this phenomenon was real, and that there would be a series of different historical events that would occur, everything from war in the Middle East to eventually perhaps fear of some type of asteroid making contact on Earth, and then eventually an event where humans would, in the major cities of the world, perhaps have some type of encounter with motherships, and eventually this would usher in a world government, perhaps, or even some type of religious event where everyone would accept some type of unified fate. We don't exactly know what it is, but it is something that perhaps could be on the horizon. If you see how the world changed during the pandemic and accepted different protocols, it's not that far-fetched to think that we wouldn't accept other protocols if all of a sudden on the major news channels and the major media, we were all told that there was, and the alien phenomenon was new. So whether or not that is true, we may be set up for that, and it could be an organic version of this where real aliens really do something like this, or it could be artificial, where those in power recognize that there's a huge opportunity to usher in a formal world government more than what the United Nations has, and to be able to either use augmented reality or the airwaves to be able to affect certainly the power of society in general. So I don't exactly know what the future holds on this subject. I do know that people are becoming more aware of the topic, and they are taking it more and more seriously. And especially with movies like Bob Lazar's S4 on Amazon Prime, where he really goes into depth of what he encountered at the Nevada test site, or even Disclosure Day. These are mainstream opportunities for people to learn and to hopefully take the phenomenon very seriously.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss the movie Disclosure Day with you, and the new Bob Lazar movie, or documentary, I guess it was, that came out a few months ago. Do you know who Bryce Zabel is? Have you ever heard of him?
The name sounds familiar, but I'd appreciate it if you would enlighten me.
Yeah, if I'm saying, and I may not be pronouncing his name right, but Bryce Zabel, he created the TV show Dark Skies. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it had to do with aliens and disclosure and all kinds of stuff like that. It was a pretty good show, but he's been quoted as saying that he was visited by several people and they basically told him, we have information that we want to give you, but you have to incorporate it into your shows and your movies in the coming future. And they described it as soft disclosure, stuff like
Yes.
that. And long story short, he went back and forward with them and he ended up not making the deal with them. So they kept telling him, and through showing up at his house, having meetings with his partner and various ways of talking to him, we want to give you this information and we want to incorporate it into your scripts in future projects. So, we're going to just trickle, and it'll be true stuff that'll just trickle in to people's eyes through your media. And this is like a soft disclosure operation. And he never made the deal with them because he didn't want people telling him how to make his films. He wanted to do how he's wanting to do it. And he just didn't know if it was all true. But my question to you is, we know the type of movies Steven Spielberg has made in his career. And a lot of this stuff he's made, in my opinion, there's a lot of truth to it, especially the new movie Disclosure Day. What do you think the odds are that the deal wasn't made with Bryce Zabel, but it was made with Steven Spielberg? And a lot of the stuff he's putting out in these movies are kind of helping us get used to the fact that we're not alone in the universe.
I think it's more likely than not. As I understand, This is a phenomenon known as predictive programming, where basically truth is produced within some fictional type of media to basically brace the populace into understanding that much of this may be real, especially with his Encounters of the Third Kind and Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. And then certainly the most recent Disclosure Day and his hints within different periods of his career. He is a perfect person for this type of soft disclosure to be utilized. And his movies are always the biggest of budgets. They always have the A-list celebrities. They're paid attention to more than perhaps any other movies in Hollywood. Just a personal anecdote of this. One of my favorite dairy restaurants is in Los Angeles, and it is known as the Milky Way. And Steven Spielberg's mother started this restaurant. And
Really?
if you go, absolutely, yeah. So it's just a small, very small kosher restaurant in Los Angeles. And you would never know that Steven Spielberg, now that his mom has since passed, of blessed memory, he owns it now. And if you go to the bathroom of this at this restaurant, he has posters of all of his movies. And it is just the most fascinating walk that you can ever do to we were discussing Steven Spielberg, and perhaps there may be government agencies that may have influenced some of his filmmaking, perhaps some of the decisions that he's made. Perhaps he's really one of the leaders in the soft disclosure movement. And I was just stating that it's fascinating if you go to what was his mother's restaurant of blessed memory, and now he owns it. It's incredible to see all of his movies that and how they've affected society. Everything from Jaws and the ocean to Jurassic Park and the de-extinction movement, and then of course Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. and now Disclosure Day. So I find that to be just incredibly insightful, and perhaps it's a little portal into the effect that he has had on just media and the alien disclosure movement.
Well, I believe that 100%, man. But the big question is I'd like to get your opinion on it. Why the cover up? Why would the government, want to cover this up? Why not just tell us? What's the big secret here?
Sure. So this has a lot of the alien phenomena has a lot of effects on human society. Perhaps first and foremost, from a societal perspective, there's a certain status quo with the people in power, and there would be an immediate realization that they are not completely in control. Moreover, there's a military defense aspect of this where technologies like force fields and anti-gravity and faster than light travel and faster than light communication and telepathy and telekinesis and teleportation, these types of technologies would be made known to your average individual that they're real, that there's been a cover up of them, and that they may be utilized by other countries, perhaps for in improper means or purposes, which could cause much of the um, world to us, or just within the United States or whatever country it may be, may cause some fear. Moreover, there's the energy aspect of this. So we have to think that if we were able to manipulate gravity, well, that basically in its own way could perhaps put the airline industry out of business, or be able to use advanced energy creation through nuclear energy, or advanced nuclear energy. That may put the fossil fuel industry, it may endanger that. The idea that people may be able to live longer than the traditional lifespan that we're used to could become unsettling to some individuals as well. And the religious aspects of this, the idea that perhaps what we read in Genesis or Bereshit, that God created the world in 7 days, may not be wholly scientifically accurate. Maybe this is metaphorical. Maybe this is something that was just used by ancient peoples to be able to give our history a beginning. But it would definitely have major religious aspects, religious impacts, and really the people in power, whether they're politicians or bankers or the military-industrial complex, does not want to disturb the status quo. And so by allowing soft disclosure, it allows the people involved and the people in the know to have a different knowledge of what may be seen by the rest of society. And slowly but surely, everyone is becoming more aware and awakened to this phenomena slowly, which allows the status quo to be maintained, as opposed to one immediate revelation of this phenomena could cause a disruption of that status quo. That, in my opinion, is just a few of the reasons why this idea, this phenomena has been kept under wraps for, well, perhaps going back to antiquity, but at least in the modern age since 1947.
I definitely think it boils down to two things, Rabbi. I think it boils down to control and money. And I think that's what all this is behind, you know.
I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you.
You know, Rabbi, this has been just an absolutely fascinating conversation. And I got the feeling me and you could talk for another 2 hours, but we are approaching that 1 hour mark. And I want to, give you the opportunity to, just get anything else out there that you want to get off your chest right now. What's your message to everybody before we go? I'd just like to hear your thoughts of, what you'd like to get out on the airwaves tonight. What's your message for everybody?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost is treat others the way that you want to be treated. That's the golden rule in many theological aspects and many religions. And that's at the heart of what I do. I try to treat people with respect and the way that I would want to be treated. In terms of the topics that I discuss, in addition to the alien phenomenon, that's just one of the things that I really like to delve into. I'm a futurist at heart. So things like anti-gravity, antimatter, faster than light travel, faster than light communication, things like teleportation, telekinesis, telepathy, space elevators, space tourism, terraforming of other planets, interstellar travel.
Man. You have to promise me you're going to come back on. This was obviously an alien show, but
absolutely.
I would love to have you back on to talk about some of those things, man, because that's right up my alley.
Excellent. And we'll do that. You had said earlier that you're a Star Trek fan, and I find much of the even Star Trek itself could be predictive programming. Some of the technology, though, that was
Absolutely, yeah.
once science fiction is becoming science fact.
Yep.
Things like perhaps Santa Claus machines, also known as
Mhm.
replicators, basically a 3D printer that's connected to all of the periodic table to be able to create whatever it is that you want. Is a fascinating topic that I love to discuss. Other things that I enjoy discussing are, of course, artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, cryptocurrencies, quantum computing, certainly de-extinction. People don't know this, but the first successful de-extinction, and we're talking about essentially either bringing back an once extinct species or at least a hybridization of it, the first successful de-extinction has already taken place. It took place in the year 2003 with the Pyrenean ibex, which was a goat located in northern Spain, southern France. Fast forward to the year 2021, a company out of Dallas, Texas is founded known as Colossal Bioscientific. They've made it their goal that within the next 2 years, or by the year 2028, to reintroduce the woolly mammoth into the Arctic Circle utilizing Asian elephant surrogates. I find this to be absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely.
They recently made headlines with their direwolf hybridization project. You can actually visit the direwolf in Texas. Joe Rogan has visited these direwolves. Following the reintroduction of the woolly mammoth, they want to reintroduce the Tasmanian tiger, followed by the dodo bird, which to me, when I was born and when I was a young person, that would absolutely seem like science fiction, but it's becoming science fact. For any of your
Yep,
listeners
absolutely.
who hear this, they should know that my goal is really to allow them to have financial independence. Join my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. Connect with me on these topics. I want to give them the resources to be able to extend their life. One of the things I enjoy talking about is life extension technology with people's consent. I don't want people to have anything forced upon them. It's their body and it's their choice. I want people to, though, if they know that these types of technologies are available, things like oxygen therapy, human growth hormone, stem cells, cryonics, cryogenics, nootropics, things like peptides, cold shock therapy, red light therapy, blood transfusions, testosterone replacement therapy are available. And I can maybe one day with this project be able to fund that for them. I want them to be able to extend their average life expectancy from age 80 to age 100 to 120 or more if they want with their consent. But they may reach 120 years old and they may say, Rabbi, you know what? It's been a really great run. Back in 2026, when we learned about you, everything that you discussed sounded like science fiction, but it's become science fact. Our bodies are starting to break down, though. What's the next plan? And this may be one of the ways to achieve this, but a certain type of technology exists or is becoming more of a realistic existence. And that's known as mind uploading technology, where with someone's consent, we scan their brain into a computer like a CAT scan or an MRI, knowing where every atom is in their central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, for later download as an android, an avatar, a cyborg, a cybernetic being, a clone of themselves, a robot, an ethereal being, whatever they want to be. But essentially what I'm saying to you and to your audience is if you want, with your consent, within a generation or two, the idea of a immortality, or at least a digital immortality, may become much more of a more realistic than you may have thought. And so these are decisions that we're having to make, perhaps. Certainly aspects like age reversal and regenerative technology is becoming more mainstream. And eventually we may be able to at least delay death indefinitely and within reason, be able to become a different kind of being. If someone considers that to be a shapeshifter or some type of evolution, call it whatever you want. But what I know it to be is we are evolving from the traditional Homo sapien into something different, something that perhaps doesn't die, which is quite unique. And moreover, for anyone out there who's ever lost anyone, I'm sure we all have, there are other types of technologies that if you want, perhaps within a generation or two, you may be able to utilize. One is called revivification technology, where literally there are multiple ways to do this, but perhaps be able to recreate someone's DNA, perhaps put that into a clone, perhaps be able to reintroduce their previous memories into them, which we may have to just discuss at another time due to time constraints, but basically bring back your loved ones, either in a real clone of themselves or even just a holographic version. And so for anyone out there who has suffered loss, lost. I want them to know that there may be a future, there may be an opportunity, if they haven't reached closure, that the story may not be over. So with that, for anyone who wants to connect with me, I'm live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on YouTube. Just type Rabbi Rothschild in YouTube and filter by live to watch all of my streams 24 hours a day from 360 degrees. You can choose whatever angle you want the most. But what I really implore people to do is to come to my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. I'm available 24 hours a day to not just your audience, but people throughout the world. You don't have to be Jewish to join my Discord. You don't have to be Jewish to interact with me. I welcome people of all faiths or no faith to be able to connect with them from a pastoral perspective, to be able to connect with them if they want advice on employment or relationships, or they want to talk about history, or they want to talk about futurism, or they want to talk about any of the subjects that we've talked about. Moreover, it's a place for people to build friendships, and we play games in there, we watch sports, we watch movies, do everything that you can basically do with a group of people and from a digital perspective. So again, that's discord.me/rabbi. And I dare your audience to look at all of my social media at linktree.com/Rabbi Rothschild. I am making your audience aware. I have over 100 years of data archived on YouTube alone with all of my streams, 25 streams over 4 years, 25 times 4. And that's just on YouTube. I'm live on Rumble. I'm live on Twitch. I'm live on Twitter. You name it, I basically have some kind of digital footprint there. So for anyone who wants to connect with me, please check me out on YouTube, come to my Discord and connect with me, look at my social media on Linktree. And with that, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be able to share what I know about this subject, and to be able to have my voice heard to your audience. And I look forward to doing this again. And yes, we will get into more of the futurology aspects of the discussion. I have found this to be an extremely exciting and fascinating discussion with you. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to your audience for the time.
Absolutely, man. Fascinating conversation, Rabbi. I really appreciate it. And of course, we'll put the links to all your stuff in the show notes, man. That way anybody can just, find the links and click on them and go check you out, man. We really appreciate the work you're doing. And yeah, just thank you, and definitely going to set up another show, man, because you and I got a lot to talk about.
Excellent.
I appreciate you, Rabbi.
I appreciate
you very much,
well,
sir.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
The unknown awakens, hear the echoes grow loud. We're diving deep, join the curious crowd. In the paranormal war room, we take flight, bringing the spooky vibes, shadows and light. With every beat, the legends we explore, unleashing the spirits, we're ready for more. Down like thunder from the skies. Cryptids lurking near, in the darkness they rise. Paranormal tales that will twist your mind. Tune into the mystery, leave the norm behind. In the war room we fight with the strange insight. Unveiling truths in the paranormal war room. We take flight, bringing the spooky vibes, shadows and light. With every beat, the legends we explore, unleashing the spirits, we're ready for more. So hit that subscribe, don't be left in the dark. Join us in the war, let's make our